All right, so get ready because we're diving deep into Emily in Paris, season 3. I gotta say, you sent over a really wild mix of sources this time. We got video essays, we got those like super short reaction videos, and even some commentary in Hebrew.
Wow.
Right? So, our mission today, it's to like sift through all of that, all those different takes, and try to give you a fresh perspective on this season. And let me tell you, there is a lot to unpack.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, right off the bat, one thing that really jumps out is how everyone seems to agree about Sylvie Grotto.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like she's totally become like the fan favorite this season.
Interesting. It's more than just like Sylvie is great, though, right?
Yeah.
Like the sources actually dive into why she's connecting with viewers this time around.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people are saying she's like this breath of fresh air compared to, well, how do I put this? Emily's, you know, uh,
Flawlessness.
yeah, like Sylvie's more complex. She makes mistakes. She struggles. And I think that makes her relatable to people.
She feels more human, right? Like a real person, not just a perfect character. Someone trying to juggle a crazy career and a messy personal life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some people are even saying that the show gets way more interesting when it focuses on Sylvie instead of all of Emily's mishaps.
Huh.
Like there's a real hunger out there for a Sylvie-centric spin-off, I think.
Ooh, a Sylvie spinoff. Now that's something I would watch. Just picture it. Sylvie taking on these massive clients, dealing with all those crazy employees. And who knows, maybe she even finds a new love interest who can actually keep up with her.
Huh. Yeah, the possibilities are endless with a character like Sylvie.
Totally.
But speaking of complicated relationships, we can't just gloss over that love triangle that, like, just takes over this whole season.
Oh, you mean the Emily Alfie Gabriel saga?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that one.
Mhm.
But, it actually gets even messier this time around when you add Camille's actions into the mix.
Yeah, and we have to talk about the reactions to all this relationship drama,
Yeah.
especially from Persephone Biggin.
Oh,
She does not hold back calling everyone disgusting monsters, and she keeps referring to the whole thing as like B-world. I think that's her way of saying it's like way too dramatic, like reality TV level drama.
uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, her commentary is definitely colorful. But, it does bring up some interesting points. Like, she seems really uncomfortable with how casually the show treats cheating.
Right.
And it kind of makes you think about like cultural differences and how people view relationships.
Hmm.
It's interesting. Is the show trying to glamorize cheating or just reflecting how things are changing in society?
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the drama, but Persephone's reaction kind of makes you stop and think about the ethics of it all. Where do you stand on it all personally? Are you Team Alfie, Team Gabriel, or just, I don't know, Team Get Your Act Together?
Uh-huh. Good question.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have to talk about the ending. I mean, that cliffhanger is a total bombshell.
Hmm.
Camille dropping the pregnancy news and deciding to marry Gabriel, even though she has feelings for Emily. Talk about dramatic tension.
Oh, Persephone's reaction to that was priceless. I have to say, though, beyond the shock value, it does make you wonder about Camille's motivations, right?
For sure.
Is she actually in love with Gabriel, or is this all like a calculated move, and how is this going to affect Emily and Elfie?
So many questions. It's like the writers are masters of manipulation, leaving us all wanting more. But it also kind of makes you wonder if they're relying a little too much on these big dramatic twists to keep people watching.
Hmm.
What do you think? Does it make you excited for next season or more frustrated with the characters' constant back and forth?
Honestly, I think it's a little bit of both. Part of me is hooked, like I need to know what happens next.
Yeah.
But part of me is also like, are these characters ever going to learn from their mistakes? But hey, even with all the drama, there were some genuinely funny and beautiful moments this season.
I mean, totally.
Like, remember Sylvie and Emily's crazy scheme to get their office back?
Oh, yeah.
Persephone was dying laughing at that, and I gotta say, I agree with her.
That scene was so good. It really showed off their dynamic, the ambition, the cleverness, and how far they're willing to go to get what they want.
Exactly. And remember that almost fatal accident. Like, suddenly, those croissants didn't seem so important anymore. And you know what? Persephone's over-the-top terror was actually pretty relatable.
Oh, totally. That was definitely a jolt to the system, like a reminder that underneath all the glamour and romance, there's a real world out there.
Yeah.
And even in a city as beautiful as Paris, things can go very wrong.
For sure. But then, the show gives us that incredible hot air balloon scene.
Oh, yeah.
It was like pure magic, a reminder of how beautiful and magical Paris can
It
be.
was so nice after all that chaos. It's like, it reminded us why Emily fell in love with the city in the first place.
Exactly. It was a much needed dose of beauty and wonder amidst all the drama.
And, it really highlights how Emily in Paris balances those light, fun, visually stunning elements with the heavier, sometimes even heartbreaking storylines, right?
Yeah, it does. Speaking of balance, though, there are a few things that your sources didn't really cover, and I'm curious about your take. Like, Mindy's storyline felt a bit, I don't know, sidelined this season. What do you think? Was that a missed opportunity?
I think that's definitely worth talking about. Mindy is such a dynamic character. She has so much potential.
Right.
It would have been interesting to see her story explored more deeply.
I agree.
Yeah.
And what about the fashion and the city itself? Were those elements as prominent as in past seasons?
hmm
It seems like the focus shifted more towards the interpersonal drama this time.
That's an interesting observation. Maybe the writers are trying to move the show beyond its initial, premise,
Hmm.
focusing more on the characters and their relationships than on just showcasing the glamorous side of Paris.
Maybe. It does make you wonder if the show is losing some of its unique charm in the process, though, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
the fashion and the city itself were such big parts of what made Emily in Paris so visually appealing and fun to escape into.
It's a tough balance to strike, isn't it?
Hmm.
Keeping those elements that initially drew people in
Yeah.
while also letting the characters and storylines evolve.
Totally. It's a real tightrope walk. But
Yeah.
hey, speaking of tricky situations, what does all this mean for season 4? Where do you think the show might be headed based on what we've seen so
Yeah.
far?
Well, I mean, with that ending, it's pretty clear there's going to be even more drama. The love triangle is definitely not over. Camille's pregnancy throws everything off balance,
Mhm.
and Sylvie's agency is still trying to find its footing.
So many unanswered questions. Like, are Emily and Gabriel finally gonna leave into their feelings, or is Camille and the baby gonna make things even more complicated? And poor Alfie, left at the altar like that. I mean, will he even stay in Paris?
I know, right?
Yeah,
It's giving Shakespeare, love, betrayal, ambition. It's all there.
yeah,
I think that's part of why people are drawn to this show. Those universal themes that we never get tired of seeing play out.
totally. And while we're talking about things people love, did you notice how much those sources focused on the possibility of a Sylvie spinoff?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's like everyone's on board, even the people who usually criticize the show.
It's pretty crazy, right? I think it just shows how strong of a character Sylvie is.
Mm.
She's complex, she's flawed, but she's also incredibly capable. And you can't deny she's got charisma.
For sure.
She represents a different kind of female power, the kind that isn't afraid to be direct, maybe even a little ruthless sometimes.
And let's be honest, she's just so much fun to watch. Those one-liners, that impeccable style, the way she handles every crazy situation that gets thrown her way. She's like a force of nature.
Totally.
Huh?
Maybe that's why she resonates with people so much, In a world that feels so chaotic and unpredictable, Sylvie just represents control, Like she's the one person who always knows what she wants and how to get it.
Yeah, I get that. Speaking of things we want, though, I have to bring up Mindy's storyline again. Or should I say, the lack of one. Those sources you sent didn't really get into this, but I'm wondering why you think that might be an issue.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, Mindy is such a talented musician. Her backstory is so interesting, and she offers such a different point of view to the whole group dynamic.
Mm.
Sidelining her feels like, I don't know, a missed opportunity.
Exactly. It's like she's so much more than just Emily's friend. She has her own goals, her own challenges, her own story.
Totally. Maybe the writers are saving her story for later seasons, or maybe they're just having a hard time balancing all the characters. It's definitely something to pay attention to going forward, though.
Definitely. It would be such a shame to see her potential wasted.
Agreed. Now, thinking about things that were, missing, I noticed another interesting gap in the sources you sent. We talked a lot about all the relationship stuff, but there wasn't much discussion of the fashion or Paris itself.
Oh, good point. Yeah, I noticed that too. The fashion and the portrayal of Paris were so central in the earlier seasons, but they felt kind of muted this time around.
Right.
Do you think it was intentional on the part of the writers, or maybe just a side effect of all the focus on those relationships?
Maybe this show is trying to, mature a bit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, move beyond just the surface level glamour.
Right.
And focus more on the complexity of the characters and their relationships.
It makes sense, but it also makes you wonder if they're losing some of that escapism that made the show so popular in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Part of the joy of watching Emily in Paris is getting to, like, lose yourself in the beauty of the city and those amazing outfits.
It's a balancing act for sure. They have
Yeah.
to evolve, but also stay true to what made the show successful to begin with.
I know. But okay, just for fun, remember that Sylvie spinoff we were talking about?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What if they actually went for it? What kind of Parisian adventures would you want to see Sylvie taking on?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I'm picturing her leading her agency to like total world domination, landing huge clients, navigating the crazy world of Parisian fashion,
Yeah.
maybe even mentoring some new up-and-coming marketers.
Love it. And of course, there would have to be those glamorous events, those power lunches, little romance maybe.
Totally. We'd still get all the elegance and sophistication of Paris, but seen through Sylvie's sharp and witty perspective.
Right.
It would be all about female power, ambition, and of course, amazing style.
Sign me up. That's a show I would definitely binge watch.
Me too.
But for now, back to reality.
Oh.
What's your overall take on season 3? What stood out to you, and what do you think it says about where the show's headed?
I mean, it's pretty clear that Emily in Paris is still figuring things out, trying to find that balance between lighthearted escapism and more serious character development and storytelling.
And they're definitely not shying away from the drama.
Nope, not at all. But I think the real question is, can the show grow beyond the cliches and stereotypes that some people have criticized it for?
Oh, yeah.
And to show us a more, like, authentic side of Parisian life and culture.
And can they do that without losing the things that made it so popular in the first place? It's a tough challenge.
It is, for sure.
But I have a feeling the writers are up for it. They've definitely given us a lot to talk about with this season.
Oh, yeah. So much to discuss and dissect. From Sylvie stealing every scene to the whole ethical mess of that love triangle, this season has been a whirlwind of emotion and thought-provoking moments.
It has been a wild ride. And while we might not have all the answers right now, I think that's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
We're left wondering, speculating, and wanting more.
And that's the sign of a good show, right?
Yeah.
That it leaves you wanting more.
Well said. So, to our listeners out there, I hope this deep dive has given you some new insights and maybe even changed your perspective on Emily in Paris Season 3. And as we all anxiously await the next chapter in Emily's Parisian adventure, we'll leave you with this one last question. What do you think the future holds for Emily, her love life, and her career?
Yeah.
Will she embrace the chaos or finally figure out how to create some balance in her life? Only time will tell. Thanks for coming along with us on this deep dive.
It's been fun.
You know what? I just remembered one of the sources you sent over, the Hebrew commentator, that friendly space ninja.
Oh, yeah.
They had this really interesting take on the show's, like, motivation. They suggested that Emily in Paris might actually be more concerned with showing off brands and products than with telling a good story.
Whoa.
I know, right? It makes you think, are those strategically placed McDonald's bags and Chanel dresses the real reason people keep watching?
That's a great point. I mean,
Yeah.
It makes sense. The show generates so much buzz, which translates into valuable advertising. But it also raises questions about the, like, artistic integrity of the show, doesn't it?
For sure. Are the writers willing to sacrifice character development and plot just to showcase luxury brands? It's a slippery slope. I'm curious to see how they handle this in the future. But hey, even if the show is kind of a guilty pleasure, it's still really entertaining.
Oh, for sure. And it's definitely gotten us thinking about relationships, cultural differences, and even the influence of brands. It's been a great discussion.
Absolutely. And speaking of relationships, we can't end this deep dive without talking about the big one, the one that's had everyone talking, the love triangle. Emily, Alfie, Gabriel. It's kept us all on the edge of our seats, hasn't it? But after everything that went down this season, where do you think things are headed? Will Emily finally make a choice? I mean, it's the question that's been bugging us all season, right? Will she go for Alfie? That stability, that sense of comfort? Or will she finally just go for it with Gabriel? I mean, the chemistry between them is undeniable.
Right. And what about Camille? Will she actually try to make things work with Gabriel? Or is she going to realize that maybe their connection isn't, like, true love, you know?
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's more about, I don't know, just practicality.
It's that age-old dilemma, isn't it? The heart wants what it wants, but sometimes, your head has other ideas.
Right. And in Emily's case, there's just so much going on. Her career's taking off. She's got her friends, that whole sense of adventure she's always chasing. No wonder she can't make up her mind.
It's almost like she's torn between two different versions of herself. The Emily, who's all about her career, who loves structure and success.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's that other Emily, the one who's spontaneous and romantic, who craves passion and excitement.
Totally. Maybe that's what her whole journey this season is really about.
Mm.
It's not even about picking between two guys. It's about figuring out, like, who she wants to be
Hmm.
and what kind of life she wants in Paris.
That's a good point. And, we can't forget about the whole cultural aspect either, right? Like, Persephone's reactions, as funny as they were, kind of highlighted how the show's tackling those different views on relationships and fidelity. It's like they're challenging the whole idea of monogamy.
It's true. And asking some tough questions about, what it even means to be in love these days.
Right.
I think it's great. Pushing boundaries, sparking debate. That's what good TV is supposed to do. And hey, whether you agree with what the characters are doing or not, you got to admit, the whole love triangle thing is entertaining.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely kept us talking. But, even with all the focus on romance, there are those other storylines that the show's exploring. Emily's work, her friendships with Mindy and Sylvie, how her understanding of French culture is changing. All that stuff matters, too.
Totally. And, it's in those quiet moments, those little moments of connection and growth, that the show really shines, I think.
Yeah.
You see those flashes of Emily's vulnerability, her determination, how willing she is to learn and change.
And that's what makes her such a relatable character, despite all her flaws and mistakes.
Exactly. She's not perfect, but she's trying.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to navigate this new, crazy world. And that's something we can all connect with.
Definitely. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Emily in Paris, season 3, I think the biggest takeaway is that the show is still growing. It's trying new things, playing with different themes, and pushing the envelope when it comes to relationships and cultural differences.
It's true. And man, has it given us a lot to talk about.
It has.
From Sylvie being a total queen to the whole ethical minefield of that love triangle, this season has been a wild ride of emotions and things that make you think.
It has. And while we might not have all the answers, that's part of what makes it so engaging, right?
Totally.
We're left with questions, with theories, and with that feeling of wanting to know what happens next.
And that, my friend, is the sign of a show that's doing something right. It leaves you wanting more.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So to all our listeners out there, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive and maybe even got some new perspectives on Emily in Paris season 3. As you wait for the next chapter in Emily's story, we'll leave you with one final thought. What do you see happening next for Emily? For her love life? For her career? Will she lean into all that chaos or finally figure out how to find some balance? Who knows? Guess we'll have to wait and see. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure. Ira B.